The sharks are never looking to save you, they are just looking for bait. You sit on your couch, watching a desperate founder walk down that carpeted hallway, completely convinced that a television handshake is the golden ticket to the American dream. The music grows more dramatic, the contract is sealed with a smile, and the screen fades to a commercial break. But in the venture capital world, television is not reality. Behind the glittering facade of Shark Tank lies a brutal screening process where roughly half of the deals you celebrate on screen are quietly shut down before a single dollar ever changes hands. It is the most brilliant marketing illusion on modern television, a branding machine that turns hardball capitalism into primetime family entertainment. Picture a firefighter standing in his garage at midnight, holding the invention that was supposed to change his life. A billionaire shook his hand on a nationally broadcast television show. The check never came. The phone stopped ringing. He is still holding the thing. Nobody is coming. That firefighter is real. His name is Jeff Stroop, and in Season 2, he walked into the tank with Hy-Conn, a quick connect fire hose valve that could cut hydrant connection times to seconds. On camera, Mark Cuban offered him $1.25 million for the entire company, plus a 3-year contract and royalties. Stroop walked off the set ecstatic. Then the cameras went off and the attorneys moved in. By Stroop's own account, Cuban wanted to license the design to another manufacturer instead of building it in-house, a move that would have written the founder out of his own company. But Stroop balked. The deal collapsed and he walked away with his patents and none of the cash. And the bad luck didn't stop there. A follow-on investment from an Arkansas venture studio was announced months later. It fell through, leaving the company stranded without the capital needed to fulfill orders. Here is the uncomfortable part. His story is not the exception. It is the blueprint. So why does this keep happening? Because the handshake you see is not the deal. On television, a pitch lasts under 10 minutes after editing, all tears and ticking clocks and swelling music. In the real world, an investment takes months of due diligence, forensic accounting, and legal review. The sharks are not signing contracts on that stage. They are signing a non-binding letter of intent, a fancy way of saying, maybe if your books check out, and the second the cameras stop, the power flips. A minute ago, the founder was a television hero. Now they're a line item on a spreadsheet, sitting in the inbox of a junior analyst who has never even seen the show. Here is the number the network never shows you in those feel-good follow-up segments. According to a Forbes analysis of the show's first 7 seasons, 73% of on-air deals either collapsed or were quietly renegotiated after filming. The study was based on interviews with participants from 237 agreements. 43% never closed at all. Read that again. Almost half of the handshakes you cheer on are doomed to fail from the start. Sometimes that is on the founder. Under the lights, people inflate their numbers. They overstate their tech, bury a pending lawsuit, fudge what it really cost them to land a customer. Then the legal team asks for the real tax returns and the story falls apart. But not every dead deal is the founder's fault, and the biggest on-air deal in the show's history proves it. Robert Herjavec offered $5 million for half of Zero Pollution Motors, a company building a car that ran on compressed air. Largest handshake ever filmed on that stage. It never closed. The cameras got their blockbuster moment. The deal quietly died in review. But the founders are not always the problem. Sometimes the sharks themselves use due diligence as a slow-motion exit. Damon John has said on the record that he figures only about half of the deals struck on air ever actually close. He once asked a company he'd shaken hands with, a guitar learning gadget called Chord Buddy, for its income statement, and a literal box of receipts showed up at the door. No audit, no statements, just hundreds of crumpled papers thrown into a cardboard container, leaving the investor's legal team to manually reconstruct years of chaotic small business accounting. A box. Deals like that die the moment the lights go out. Then there's the founder who got the rarest thing the tank offers, a check, written and handed over on camera. Shelley Ayler walked out of Season 3 with $75,000 from Lori Greiner for her Show No towel. America watched her cash it. Except by Ayler's own account, she never did. She later said the on-air handshake was made for television. The check never cleared into a real partnership, and the Disney deal the show paraded was staged for the cameras. The most public yes on the stage was quietly a no. And in the early seasons, the deck was stacked before a founder said a single word. The show's production company, Finmax, slipped a clause into the contestant contracts. Every entrepreneur who walked the carpet had to surrender either 5% of their company or 2% of their profits to the producers just for showing up, deal or no deal. Mark Cuban eventually killed the clause by threatening to quit. and it was scrapped retroactively. But the appetite behind it never left. Sharks still use the post-show window to grind valuations down, quietly rewriting the equity split they agreed to, knowing the founder is now too publicly exposed to walk away. Pull back far enough, and the sharks shrink to bit players. Long before ABC, this show was a Japanese program called Money Tigers, and Sony has since licensed the same format into more than 50 countries, from Brazil to Bangladesh. Tigers, dragons, sharks, a same set, same hallway, same handshake 50 times over. The American version alone pulled in more than $140 million in ad revenue in a single year. Every territory is another stream of advertising and licensing fees. The founders come and go. The format prints money on a loop. So if half of all deals are doomed to fail, why doesn't the line of founders ever get any shorter? Because of a second force most of them are actually chasing, the Shark Tank effect. When an episode airs, a company's website sees a sharp, temporary spike in traffic within 48 hours. For a small brand, that weekend can outsell the entire previous year. The sharks know this cold. They understand that the airtime itself is a form of non-dilutive financing, free publicity that costs them no equity. So a soft handshake on camera costs the shark nothing and hands their personal brand a free primetime commercial. If the deal falls through 3 months later in review, the network still got its drama, the shark still got the exposure, and the founder is left holding the empty bag. And here's the twist that proves the whole machine. Jamie Siminoff walked into the tank with a video doorbell called Doorbot, got flatly rejected by the panel, and walked out with nothing. Then he rode the broadcast traffic surge to scale the company himself, rebranded it as Ring, and sold it to Amazon for roughly $1 billion. Sit with that for a second. The sharks said no, and it was the best thing that ever happened to him. The deal was never the prize. The airtime was, which means the deadest deal on the show might also be its single greatest success story. Today, the most active sharks sit on sprawling portfolios. Mark Cuban alone struck more than 260 deals across 16 seasons before stepping away in 2023. The panel now runs as much like a media brand as an investment fund. The deal structures have hardened too. Kevin O'Leary is famous for pushing royalty arrangements over straight equity, a setup that quietly protects his downside while capping the founder's upside. The mentorship the show promises has, for most founders, become a stack of standardized vendor contracts and a junior analyst's inbox. The machine is tuned for the shark's protection, not the founder's growth. The lesson of the tank is that visibility is not viability. When a business needs a 10-minute primetime window to survive, it is not building a foundation, it is chasing a high. As I've learned, true growth comes from quiet action, defensible patents, and unit economics that actually work, not from a handshake with a celebrity billionaire under hot studio lights. Walk into a room full of apex predators counting on their mercy, and you have already done the math wrong. The sharks were never there to fund the future of American innovation. They were just filming a show.